Morning, guys.
Good morning.
Oh. All right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning. No. My machine is working. Just a second. One more try there. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN daf mem zayin. We are continuing to look for a source of what appears to be Rav Mesharshia's opinion, who rejects the halachic guidelines that we began the sugya with, like Rav Yossi and Rav Shimon, halachic Rav Yossi, Rav Meir and Rav Yehuda, halachic Rav Yehuda, Rav Yehuda and Rav Yossi, halachic Rav Yossi, with some nuances that we had, but it seems like Rav Mesharshia rejects all of it. He is of the opinion that every case has to be ruled individually, and we're learning through the sugya of trying to find a source for this shita. We're going to be also learning through the sugya that whenever we have a machlokes between Rav and Rabbi Yochanan, we generally paskin like Rabbi Yochanan. We're going to review some halachas of Yibum. We're going to learn some halachas of Avchana. We're going to learn exceptions to the rule that we began Masechta Avodah Zarah with. There's going to be certain transactions that we are allowed to do with Oivdei Avodah Zarah, even if it's before their holidays, as we'll explain the reason for these exceptions. But through the sugya, we're going to ultimately have to redefine the shita of Rav Mesharshia. All that Rav Mesharshia really said is that Rav rejects all of the halachic guidelines, but not Rabbi Yochanan, and therefore Lav Dafka, not Rav Mesharshia himself. We're going to continue the Mishnah that we began on Daf Mem Hey Amud Aleph. We had a machlokes, Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the Chachamim. They were debating about a sleeping traveler. The Gemara then on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis extended this machlokes to Cheftzei Hefker. And now on Daf Mem Zayin, we're going to be discussing Cheftzei Nachri. You see, a guy is not bound by halachas. He's not bound by the halachas of the Torah. He has his own Sheva Mitzvahs b'nei Noach. So if something belongs to a guy, could we say that it has no tchum limitation at all? Or do we say that it will be like Cheftzei Hefker? Cheftzei Hefker itself is already subject to the machlokes between Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri and the Chachamim. We're going to have through the sugya, interestingly, in Daf Mem Zayin, one other klal in halacha, that Shmuel and Rabbi Yochanan, the halacha will follow Rabbi Yochanan, and a lot more. We left off on Daf Mem Zayin and Medalef, 4 lines from the top of the Amid, in the middle of the line, Elo Mohaditran. Okay, so as we are now still before the conclusion, it sounded like Rav Mesharshia, he does not accept any such halachic klalim of whenever 2 Tanoim argue as a klal who we will follow, and we're simply looking for a source of his sheet. Elo Mohaditran. This is going to be a mission that we have in ERUVIN later on Daf Pei Vav. If a person who lives in a chatzir leaves his home for Shabbos, and he goes to another city, and being that he's not present, let's say it's a chatzir that separates and designates and places an eruvi chatzeros every Shabbos, so this resident is not a participant of that Eruv Chatzeros, which is not a good thing. But on the other hand, he's Bechlal Nadir. And the Mishnah says, whether it's a Nachri whether it's a Yid, and as we'll learn soon, that when it comes to Yidin, a Yisrael participates in the Eruv by merging, by becoming part of, let's say, this incorporation. A Nachri, a non-Jew, also is someone whose presence will not allow anyone to carry in that from the bottom to the Chatzeres, from the Chatzer back into the bottom. But the way you resolve the issue with a Nachri is by, so to say, buying him out. So we're going to see that there's two steps, halacha l'maisa, what has to be done now in LA when you want to make an Eruv Chatzeres, but there is something you have to acquire some rights from the Nachri. And again, the Nachri was not there. So normally whatever it is that you do with the Nachri, you did not do because he was not present. So says the Mishnah, that because of that, it's like them being present and not participating, or it's like the guy being present and you not prior to Shabbos buying his rights, and no one can carry from their homes into the Chatzar or from the Chatzar into their homes. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, ain't Oiser. Why ain't Oiser? As a general rule, because since he, whether it's a Yisrael, whether it's a Nachri, since they're not present, it doesn't bother us that they're not part of the Eruv. Rabbi Yossi Omer, depends. Nachri Oiser. And why Nachri Oiser? Because even though he's not physically present, since a Nachri doesn't have to keep Shabbos, actually a Nachri is not allowed to keep Shabbos, right? Goy Shabbos Chayiv Mitzvah. So the guy can come back during Shabbos. So he's not present now. Even if he's in a different city, he can return. And therefore he asks, a Yisrael, in the case where he went the Iracheres, which is the beginning of the Mishnah, since he's not allowed to travel back, so therefore, Eina Oiser, B'pnei she'ein derech Yisrael lovei b'Shabbos. Rab Shimon says, Afilu hiniach as beisei v'halach lishbois, eitzel bitoi ba'oiser here. We don't have to be speaking about a case. This concept of him not returning is not only when he can halachically not return because he's beyond the tchum, because he's in a different city. Even if he's in this city, as long as he went to his daughter and son-in-law, like Rashi says, not to his son and daughter-in-law, but if he went to his daughter and son-in-law, he's going to stay there for the rest of Shabbos, and therefore, even though he's in the city, Eino Oiser Shekfari Siach Datoi. Siach Datoi means that he's not going to return. In other words, when you go to your daughter-in-law's house, maybe you will return. That's the human nature, because your daughter-in-law can kick you out of the house. It's not that your daughter won't kick you out. Maybe your daughter will kick you out, you won't leave. There's a certain closeness that a person has with his daughter and son-in-law, more as a klal. There's always exceptions. But they're quite interesting. So anyway, so Rab Shimon is the most lenient, even b'oisei as long as you went eitzel bitoy. Now, and Amar Rav Chama bar Guria Amar Rav, and Amar Rav will be key, as we'll see that the Rav will be the one that rejects all of these halachic principles, and he says the halach is like Rab Shimon. Now, who does he argue with? Rabbi Yehuda, right? Rabbi Yehuda says it has to be the Iracheres. Man Panigalei, Rabbi Yehuda, and I Amrat, that whenever it's Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Shimon, halachic Rabbi Yehuda. So based on the statement of Rav, that will be the source for Rav Mesharsha to reject all of these klali halachim, counters the Gemara umay kushya, as we keep on having, even all who subscribe to these halachic klalim rules, it doesn't mean that there's no exceptions. There can be many exceptions, right? We had that statement, even when the Tanach says a klal, and he says chutz, there could be exceptions beyond that which was written in the chutz. Rav knew that here we pass like Rab Shimon, so he stated halachas like Rab Shimon, and the klalim are needed. If no one gave us up until this time, no one told us who the halach is like. So since lo itmar, so then we will follow these halachic guidelines. Okay, so weiter. That what we keep on repeating that there are two ways of making an eruv tchumen. One is by placing food, and one is by being ma'arev beraglov, which means that if a person goes to the physical place where they intend to be koine shvisa, even though they're only going to be there during bein hashmashes, and the moment it gets dark, they're going to go back home. And b'chlal be'eruv tchumen, you can never place an eruv tchumen beyond 2,000 amas, whether you even when you're putting food, it has to be within It can be by the boundary of, but it has to be within 2,000 amas. And then that becomes your headquarters. That becomes ground zero. Then you count your tchum to all directions, 2,000 amas from there. But it doesn't have to be by placing food. You can do it yourself. But now we'll see a Mishnah. Not everyone subscribes that everyone can be ma'arav b'raglav. The Zeu she'amru that only ha'ani ma'arav b'raglav. Ramei Raimer anu ein lanu ela ani. That indeed, when a person is an ani, since they cannot afford bread, so Chazal were more lenient, allowing them, him, her, the ani, to be ma'arav b'raglav. But if a person can afford, then they have to put bread in the place of their tchum. However, Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no, that echad ani, the echad ashir, are allowed to be ma'arav b'raglav. And when you amru ma'arav b'pas, ela lo hakil al ha'ashir, shelo yetze v'ya'arev. We're not saying lahakal al ani because the ani taka has no option. He cannot afford bread. Halavai, he has bread for himself. Okay. So here again, we have a machlokes between Rab Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Now, based on the column that we learned, then for sure we paskin. Oh, Rabbi Yehuda we paskin like Rabbi Yehuda. Good. So now, umas dilei Rab Chia Barashi. When Rab Chia Barashi was teaching this Mishnah, we had this a few times already, that the Rav hired, like we all hire Melamdim to teach our sons, but Rav, the father, used to listen in the classes. So when he was teaching Techia Barav, but in the presence of Rav, and he was saying this Mishnah, and when he said Echad Ani ve'Echad Ashir, Amalei Rav tells the Malamed, Rav tells Rab Chia Barashi, oh, when you're teaching this Mishnah to my son, Isayim Banami, I want you to add on your own, finish the Mishnah by saying that halach is like Rabbi Yehuda. Now, the klal is Rabbi Yehuda and Rab Meir, the halach is like Rabbi Yehuda. We don't follow Rab Meir as the klal we have over here. As we learned also explicitly that on Daf Yud Gimel Amud Beis above, that since Rab Meir was so deep and he was able to argue both sides, we couldn't chop from him who the halach is like. Now here it's this first time, it's unlike all the other questions. All the other questions we found a case where the halacha was against the klal. Here we're not finding a case where the halacha is against the klal. Here we're finding Rav emphasizing to say something that was unnecessary. Why did he have to say halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda? Now tartalamali. Isn't didn't we already have a klal that Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda halacha ke Rabbi Yehuda? The fact that Rav needed to emphasize that halacha is like Rabbi Yehuda, he can't answer heicha de itman. Say nothing. Heicha de lo itmar, we would follow the klal. So we see that Rav rejects the klal. That's the source of Rav Misharshi. Okay. So the Gemara says, first of all, we accept the fact that Rav found this need is a raya that he rejects the klal. However, umay kushya dilma Rav leis leila on the klal. Very good. But Rabbi Yechanan, because the sugya was Rav Idi bar Yaakov Amar Rabbi Yechanan, but Rabbi Yechanan will subscribe to the klolim. So even though Rav Misharshia, even if Rav Misharshia was aware of Rav's rejection, nevertheless, since Rabbi Yechanan does subscribe to the klolim, Rav Misharshia should not have sided with Rav, because there's another klal, and that is Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, halacha ke Rabbi Yechanan. So now we're still bothered by the fact that Rav Misharshia, it appears, again, we're up to the stage in the sugya, that he's rejecting this klal. All right. We're going to Masechta Yevamis. We're not that far away from it. Mishnah says that a Yevama lo yisach haloitz v'lo yitzisyabim ad shehiu lo shloisha chadash. When a woman becomes a widow, if her husband has no children, not only no children from her, but no children at all, no descendants, the husband could have had a child already, an adult child who had a grandchild. The child could have passed away predeceasing the father. It's also considered descendants. It's only when the man who passed away has no zera ein law, ayin law. Look, there's no descendants. And if he has a brother or brothers, and even though normally there's a prohibition on the category of an erva, for a brother-in-law to marry his sister-in-law. Here, not only is there no restriction, there's an obligation. Not only is there an obligation, there's already a link, there's already a zika. There's already a halachic binding that happens between, let's say, Shimon, Reuven married Rachel. If Reuven passes away with no descendants, then Shimon is already bound to Rachel. And he has to either choose to consummate that by doing an act of yibum, which is having a relation with her midoraisa, or he has to sever this bind by doing chalitza. Now, Bamed Dvarim Amurim that Reuven and Rachel had no children. When Reuven passes away, how do you know that Rachel is not pregnant? Maybe she just got pregnant. So the Mishnah begins by telling us that until 3 months pass, which is the first trimester, which is the time that's needed for a woman to start showing that she's pregnant, not yibum nor chalitza can be done. Now let's explain. It's very simple. Yibum cannot be done because if it's going to turn out that she indeed is pregnant, then the relation that Shimon were to have with Rachel, which is the act of yibum, which is a bia, that's going to be an erva. Because if she's pregnant, then the deceased man did leave descendants. If she's not, she's not. So yibum was out of the question. It's a suffix. Maybe the bia is asun midorais. What about chalitza? So guys, let's remember like this, that if she's pregnant and she miscarries, here's the challenge. If she's pregnant, are you doing chalitza? So you can argue, well, if she's pregnant and she has a child, no one got hurt by doing chalitza. True. But if she's pregnant when the chalitza was done, if you remember from Yavamas, and then she miscarries, the chalitza that was done during her being pregnant was not effective. Because while she was pregnant, there was no need to do chalitza. So it was nothing. After she miscarries, if she miscarries, God forbid, then she's bound to Shimon. Shimon won't be aware of that. Rachel won't be aware and say, we already did chalitza. But the chalitza is not effective. The chalitza that was done while there was no zika, while she was pregnant. So therefore, chalitza is also never to be done. So you don't do yibum or chalitza until you wait 3 months. Now that the Mishnah began with the laws of yibum and chalitza, now we're going to go into a general rule. And that's called the halacha of havchana. That's something that's a lot more known than the dinim of yibum and chalitza, which is very rare. When a woman gets a get, so the Beis Din doesn't give the get, not to the man, not to the divorcee. The Beis Din holds on to the physical document that they cut up in a certain way, but they give to both the husband and the ex-wife, the ex-husband and ex-wife, they give a Maisa Beis Din, they give a document telling them that they got divorced. That document, B'chlal, won't be given to the woman until 90 days, it's not exactly 90 days, until 90 days after the get was given, because a woman, let's begin with a marriage, may not get married without waiting 90 days. Why can she not get married by waiting before she waits 90 days? Because if she were to get married within 90 days of her being married to another man, and that doesn't only go to a divorcee, that can go to a widow, but by a widow there's no Maisa Beis Din. But the same halacha applies if she were to get pregnant immediately and have a child 7 months later, have a child but within, that's in the 7th month after her new marriage, we halachically will not know who the father of that child is, because since there's a possibility for a woman to have a full gestation during 6 months and a bit, right, a zivital, maybe the child is from the first husband, maybe the child is from the second husband. And it is that important by Yas Yidin to know Yichus. It's extremely important to know who the mother is that you can see biologically, but you have to know who the father is halachically. So to be mafchen, to separate, to know that it's either from the first or from the second, she has to wait 3 months. That's the general rule that people are familiar with. Now we're going to learn the details in this Mishnah, because don't forget that in the times of Chazal, the Erus and the Kedushin, which is the man giving a ring right at the beginning, the Kesef, Bishtar, Ubebiyah, that was something that was done many months, 12 months before the Nesuin was done. Now, by Erusin, we're speaking about people being Ma'adis, not with Biyah. You can argue that Erusin should be permitted, because by Erusin, there's no Maisa Biyah. Ubemela, she's not going to get pregnant from the second husband. So we're going to go into details. What exactly was prohibited? Marriage, or maybe Loi Plug? Another issue. What happens if the first marriage was only an Erusin marriage? It wasn't a Nesuyin marriage. So there's no fear that she got pregnant. There's no havamina that she got pregnant from the first husband. Let's read inside the Mishnah. That lo yunasu, this is the Tanach. Not only may they not do the Nesuyin, but not even v'lo yisarsu, they can't do the first act of Erusin, ad sheyiu lahem shloisha chadashim. That's a mamash aloi plug, because theoretically Erusin cannot bring forth a pregnancy. And more than that, the Tanach holds, it doesn't matter what marriage she exited from. It doesn't only have to be if she exited from a marriage where she was a Nesuya, even if the first one was only an engagement, a halachic engagement. Which means, Echad Besulais, she's a Psula because she never got Nesuyin, she only got Erusin. The Echad Beulais, Echad Almanais, the Echad Gerushais. The Mishnah is explaining itself, Besulais and Beulais, it's explaining it, Echad Arusais, which is why she's still a Psula, the Echad Nesuyais. So holds the Tanach. No, he's the most machmir. The concept of havchana, loy plug is always needed. However, Rabbi Yehuda depends. Nesuyais, if she was previously a nesuya, so enachanami, she cannot get a second nesuyin without waiting the havchana 3 months. But yes, yisarsu, she can be mekabel erusin right away. Vaited va'arusais. If she was previously only a woman that was mikudeshes, but she was never nesuya, then she can get married within 3 months. So because the reasons for making the havchana is really just to be mafkin whether the zera came from the first husband or from the second husband. As in these cases, it was only one of them that halachically was allowed to have a relation with her, which is the only thing that we suspect, which is what indeed happened. And there's only one exception, according to Rabbi Yehuda, chutz ma'arusa, in the region of Yehuda, that they allowed a Hassan and Kala, not what we call Hassan and Kala, but a halacha Hassan and Kala. We allowed them to have yichud. And since we allowed them to have yichud, and they were already halachically mikudeshes, so there's a chashash that they might have had a relation. So even though she's leaving a marriage of Erusin, still here you do have to wait 3 months, because she might have gotten pregnant from the first chassan, who gave her already kedushin. And they allowed yichud. Rabbi Yossi argues both with the Tanach and with Rabbi Yehuda. The Tanach is a loy plug. Rabbi Yehuda makes no loy plug. He says like this: Rabbi Yossi Omer, kol hanoshim yisarsu. Kol hanoshim yisarsu is already arguing with the Tanach, because the Tanach says that even Erusin cannot happen within 3 months. He says that as far as Erusin is concerned, all women can do Erusin. All women can do Erusin. Now he's also arguing with Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda holds that if a woman in the previous marriage was only an Arusa, she can even get married. Oh, here Rabbi Yossi holds a loiplug. Married? No one can do Nesuyin. But Erusin, everyone can do. And then he also reminds us of another exception that everyone will subscribe to, because when you speak about if you don't need havchana, so that means what you can do it right away. Well, hold on. If a woman is a almana has to sit shiva for her husband, not shiva. She has to mourn for her husband, for a parent, father and mother. God forbid, there's a concept of avelus for a year. For all of the other 5 relatives, you don't have a year's avelus, but you have a shloishim yom avelus. So during the 30 days, says Rabbi Yossi, chutz min almana, that she cannot accept the erusin within 30 days because she has to mourn b'pnei ha'ivul. Okay, so you have the 3 machlokes. Now, the amrinan, and this is what we have regarding this Mishnah, that one day, let's go with the version, Rabbi Elazar lo yola be Midrash. He couldn't come to the yeshiva, and afterwards he wanted to know what he missed out. So he found Rabasi, and Rabasi was present that day. And Amalei, this is Rabbi Elazar, asks Rabasi, my Amr Rebbe Midrasha, what was said that I missed? And Amalei Rabasi responds, Hachim Rabbi Yechanan, that we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, right? That third shita, that compromise shita. So now again, the question is, Michlal, the Chida Paligalei, don't forget that Rabbi Yaakov, right? Rabbi Yaakov and Rabbi Zirika, remember in the beginning, They were of the Shita that we paskin like Rabbi Yossi mechavei rov. And when we had that other version, that's what we emphasized. The Ikin Nafkamina is that, and that was B'Shem Rabbi Yechanan, that we only paskin like Rabbi Yossi when he argues with one, mechavei roi, not mechavei rov. So if here Rabbi Yechanan is paskening like Rabbi Yossi, it must be that the Tanakama is not the Chachamim, because if it would have been the Chachamim, again, as a Klal, then we would not have pasken like Rabbi Yossi. So Michlal, the Yichida Paligalei. And indeed, we're going to find a Braisa, and again, it's not 100% proof, but it makes sense that the Manda Amrim in the Braisa really are reflecting the Manda Amrim in the Mishnah, and we're going to clarify who the Das Yachid of the Tanakama is. As we learned in the Braisa, it's similar. Here we're speaking about a woman that in the first marriage she was halachically and the suya, but we know for other reasons that she's not pregnant from her first husband. Number one, certain women constantly leave their homes and they go to the parents', right? She's and therefore we know maybe there were Adim. We know that she was not home. She was we have to start to fast her. That she was not home with her husband. Her husband could not have gotten her pregnant, the first husband. Or again, that we know for many months before her first husband's passing or divorce, that they were angry with each other. Or if the first husband was old meaning that he was unable to have relations, or he was a chayla, or he chayla, or we know that she was an akara, or she was the zakena, or she is a ktana, or she's an island and she'ena roy leiled, or the husband was in jail, right? Or hamapelas la'achar misas baila, another great case. The husband was a first marriage where everything was nice, but after the husband passes away, she miscarried way before 3 months passed. That's it. So she's not pregnant anymore. So in all of these cases, says, now here we see in the Braisa, Rabbi Meir, which describes to loy plug, that kulam tzricham lahamtum shloisha chadashim divrei Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Yossi who says, matir lei oreis v'linasei miyad. So now we see over here that Rav Meir, again, it's not Rav Meir is the Das Yachid of the Tanakama. So now let's go back. So it's Rav Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, and Rabbi Yossi. What does Rabbi Yechanan come and say? He paskins that what? Like Rabbi Yossi. Why do we need that for? Lamali. No, it's mamash the same type of kasha we had before enough. Why did Rabbi Yechanan have to say that Allah is like Rabbi Yossi? It was said b'shem, Rabbi Yaakov said b'shem Rabbi Yechanan, that Rav Meir, the Rabbi Yossi, the Allah is like Rabbi Yossi. So again, that's a raya, not only from an Av, that's Rav Mesharshi's raya, that Rabbi Yechanan B'chlal does not subscribe to these halachic principles. So therefore he needed to say explicitly in this case that here we do paskin like Rabbi Yossi. So the Gemara says, no, that's still not good enough, because for my kushya, Dilma, there is a klal that we don't paskin like Rav Meir, right? We paskin like Rabbi Yehuda, and noch, if Rabbi Yossi, we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. But there is another klal, that whenever Rav Meir's opinion is based on a gzeira, which mamish includes the concept of a loy plug, we're putting a boundary, then we do paskin like Rav Meir. Dilma lafu came in Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. That Shmuel also generally subscribes to the Klali Halacha. The Amar, but nevertheless, Shmuel says that Halacha Kirav Meir when he's making a Gzeira. Gzeira is a boundary, a precautionary Halacha, which is mamish the case over here. In other words, I get it, that the concept of Havchana doesn't apply to all the cases. But Rav Meir, who's the Tanakama, who says, no, woman always, even for Erusin, even if she's coming off a marriage that was only Erusin, I don't care. You got to wait 3 months. Before you take the next step, wait 3 months. That's a classical Gezeda. And here we would paskin like Rav Meir. So that's why it was important for Rabbi Yechanan to say no, that in this case, we also paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Okay. Elyahu, the Gemara says, again, we're still looking for that Mesharshiyam. That was the beginning of Masechtas Avodah Zarah, but Shloisha Yomim Lifnei Eideyim, we're not allowed to do transactions with the oivdei of that avodah zarah. If you remember when we learned avodah zarah, we quoted the Tosfos that says that now, meaning now by Tosfos is now in Europe, the goyim were only were not really believing in the Christianity. It was just minig aviseinu b'yadeim. They were cultural Christians, so therefore he already paskin that you could do business with them before Sunday. But if you're dealing with people that are tako oivdei avodah zarah, normally transactions with them will bring them to be grateful, and they're going to thank their deity, and we don't want to be even a cause of them honoring their getchkin. However, we're going to learn over here exceptions where we are allowed to do very important business transactions right before their pagan holiday. All right. So what's the din, says the Braisa? You are allowed to go to a fair, which is being run by these nachrim, and here are the exceptions. It's like a lot of exceptions. You can buy behema avodim shvachos, Rashi says, because when you buy them, you're bringing them in to the ownership of a yid of kedusha, and that justifies that if this is your opportunity to do it, it's important for them to have this aliyah. Likewise, you can buy from them batim sadais ukramim, like there's hardly anything left, which is not true. Everything, all the metaltal, other than the ones mentioned. That you batim sadais ukramim, you can buy from them. We're speaking, let's go with the Rishonim that say that you're buying it from them in Eretz Yisrael, and therefore you want to make sure that the Holy Land is under the ownership of Eden. Okay. And not only can you buy, so we have behema avodim shvachos, which is really not considered metaltalin. The Torah really considers them halachically like karka, or at least when it comes to the avodim. And you're allowed to buy from them real estate, and furthermore, the koisiv amaylabar koishalahem, that's another whole topic. Can you use the non-Jewish court system? And normally we don't want to give them chashivus. But here, if we're not going to use for these big transactions, if we're not going to use their core documents, they might negate that they ever made a sale. And if you're going to bring out a document that was made in a Jewish court, they will reject it. So to make sure that you make a transaction that the other side cannot go back on by denying that it never happened, so then you have to use their court system. Kamatzal miyadam is regarding going to the arkoi shalahem. Furthermore, when it comes to buying property, let's go in the Holy Land, you can violate all rabbinic laws to make sure that this transaction comes to fruition, and that property is going to be Tachas Yad Yisrael. Metama b'chutz laretz, if there's a challenge against your transaction, and in order for you to fight your case, to defend your case, you have to go to a court that is in chutz laretz. And even though Chazal made a decree, midrabanan, that the gush of Eretz Ha'amim is matami, then they were masakin later that the avir of Eretz Ha'amim is matami, o midrabanan, because they did not mark the graves. And even if we follow the shita of Rashbi, it's only that an akum is not matami tumas oil, but l'kula, look, everyone holds that a corpse or a fragment of a bone, which is matama, if b'mago ubamasa, as the size of a so'ira, is matama even from bones of a non-Jew, and maybe there was a little bone there, b'chule, but you can violate all these rabbinics. Matame b'chutz laretz ladin ula'ared imayin, you can litigate with them, b'chule, and not only that, Hashem shematame b'chutz laretz. Now here we have words that will have to be corrected. Kach matame b'beis hakvaros. If there's for some reason a need for him to go into a beis hakvaros hakohen, he can even do that. And now the Gemara is going to say that can't be. That's the wrong version. The beis hakvaros salka daitach, that's already violating an isur d'oraisa. That's tumei d'oraisa. Ella clarifies the Gemara. What the Braisa means is Ella beis hapras. Beis hapras is an area where there was a corpse buried and then it was plowed over. Let's go with that beis hapras. And again, once it was plowed over, if the plow went into the corpse, so then there's not enough bones in one place to be matama oil, because even from a yid, when it comes to bones being matama oil, you have to have a roiv binyan, or the gulgoilas, all the shidra, right? Yeah, or Reva Hakav, doesn't matter, but it could be the plow brought up a fragment of a bone that's on the periphery on top of the ground. And then when you walk in the 100 Amas area from the cave, you might touch it. So Midrabanan, you can't walk there, but it's only a Isur Midrabanan. So here also, because it's in a case where if you're not going to go there right now, you're not going to make it to court on time, and your absence will mean that you're going to lose the case, and a property that you legally bought will be wrongfully taken away from you, so they were mated. Furthermore, continues the Braisa, and now we're going into other reasons that we will allow a kohen to violate the rabbinic tumah of Gush Eretz Ha'amin, Avira Eretz, leaving the Holy Land of Israel. That a kohen may not do midrabanan. Here we have other exceptions, not only to litigate when it comes to his ownership of property in Israel, but also mitame. Mitame means he can violate the rabbanan and go into chutz la'aretz, either lisa isha for that purpose, or v'lilmai Torah. Says on this Rabbi Yehuda, well, Masai, when is he allowed to go learn Torah bisman she'ein moitzel lilmaid? Only if there is no teacher present. We're not even speaking about a quality teacher. We're speaking about if there's no teacher present. Abel moitzel lilmaid, but if there is someone that can teach him, then lo yitame, he may not go out. So holds the Tana Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi Yomer, no. Af bisman shemoitzel lilmaid nami yitame. Gavaldik, Lefi, Chavradaf Mem Zayin Omid Beis, by turning the Amid, as we know this klal, She'ein Min HaKoil, Zoicha Adam Lilmaid, a person doesn't merit to learn from anyone. In other words, if there is a teacher that somehow connects to you or you connect to the teacher, then you can say, I'm not going to learn as much from the local teacher. I'm going to go chutz la'aretz to learn, and that justifies even a kohen, even though he's violating a tumas meis midrabanan, to go learn Torah. Ve'amar Rabbi Yossi, ma'aseh b'Yosef hakohen shehalach etzel Rabbi l'tzaydon. Tzaydon, right? Sidon is chutz la'aretz. He went to learn Torah, even though we know that in that time there were so many great teachers in Eretz Yisrael. Here, just to prove there were great teachers, not for him. After we have all of these shittas, again, V'amar Rabbi Yechanan, again, something, again, when we go against the klal, we already established, not a problem. Heiche de itmer itmer, heiche de lo yitmer lo yitmer. We already got that. But for Rabbi Yechanan to have to repeat that which is already included in the klal, that's the problem. Rabbi Yechanan, Allah Rabbi Yossi. Who's he arguing with? Who doesn't matter? Rabbi Yehuda, Rav Meir, even if it's not Rabbi Yossi, Mechavei Rav, but it's certainly Rabbi Yossi Mechavei Rai. Rabbi Yehuda, the Rabbi Yossi, halacha ke Rabbi Yossi. So we see that Rabbi Yechanan does not subscribe to these kolam. So based on that, Rav Mishashi doesn't subscribe either. Says the Gemara, no, nisht. Rabbi Yechanan needed to repeat in this case. It's not even a repetition. He needed to state in this case that the halacha is like Rabbi Yossi. Because this is so important. Even though we accept all of the klalim, this klalim should only be applied. We would have thought they are only implied in the Mishnah. Let me give you guys let's chazar a good example. Remember the klal that kol makim sheshanu rashbag, right? The Mishnah Seinu. Whenever the Mishnah quotes any shita of Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, halach gemaisi chutz me'arav tzidain and raya achreina, and we're going to learn many times together. That's only in the Mishnah. But if the Rashbag's shita is quoted in a brayso, then we don't have such a klal. When it comes to Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov, this is something that it's good to repeat, even though there's a klal also. Rabbi Eliezer and Yaakov, kavanaki. So what was the word kav? Is kuvav. Kavanaki means, even though it's a little, relative to other Tanoim, he's only quoted 106 times in Mishnayos. That's the kav. Kav is a small measurement, but it's clean. We paskin like him. There's a machlokes whether we say this klal even by braises or maybe only by Mishnayos. That's like from the Gemara over here, from Daf Mem Zayin and ERUVIN, that we can have a lot of klalim. But there's something about whether Rabbi chose to put it in the Mishnayos or whether Rabbi left it for the outside, for the brayso. And if not for Rabbi Yechanan's repetition or statement in our case, that we paskin like Rabbi Yossi, we would have argued that this machlokes is not brought down in Mishnayos. Whether a kohen is allowed to go to Chutz La'aretz to go learn Torah by a teacher, even when there is a teacher, a different teacher present in Eretz Yisrael. So we would have thought that maybe bebraisa there are no such klalim, and therefore Kamash Malan, that even though here this is a machlokes and a braisa, here we paskin like Rabbi Yossi. Now whether the Kamash Malan means Kamash Malan that we always follow the klalim in the braisas, whether the Kamash Malan means that in our case, even though there is no klal in the braisa, but we still paskin like Rabbi Yossi nonetheless. Bottom line is that after going through what the Gemara knows to be the entire Shas, we cannot find other than Rav that we found on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Aleph, that Rav did not need to repeat something had he subscribed to the klalim. So we already established that Rav does not accept the klalim, but we have no such proof from Rabbi Yechanan. And like we spoke out, even though the Gemara didn't say those words, that Rav and Rabbi Yechanan, halacha ki Rabbi Yechanan. So you can't say Rav Mesharshe rejected the klalim because Rav rejected it. That's not good enough. That's not good enough. Rav Mesharshe cannot do that. He would have to side with Rabbi Yechanan. And, this doesn't happen that often. So the Gemara says that we made a mistake in what Rav Mesharshe said. Rav Mesharshe never rejected the klalim. Rav Mesharshe told us that Rav rejects the klalim. Elo, this goes back to the Daf Mem Vav Amud Beis. We're going back to the beginning now. Elo hachi ka'amar. That what did Rav Mesharshe say? That hani klale lav divrei hakolim. All Rav Mesharshe says, he wants you to know that not everyone agrees to it because the harav leis leilo hani klale. Okay, why is it negayah to know? It's always negayah to know. It's negayah to know. There are many times that just based on this klal, you would come to one conclusion. But many times it overlaps other klalim. Then you're going to have to pick and choose which klal you're going to subscribe to. And then you will be able to say that since Rav argues, so Rav together with some other reason in another case, we're going to follow the other case. Okay. Chavra, we're going back to the Mishnah Daf Mem Hey. That's the beginning of the Sol Sugya. What did we learn in the Mishnah? We learned in the Mishnah that if you have a sleeping traveler, he was asleep during the beginning of Shabbos. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri holds that he acquires his own tchum, which is good, which means he's not stuck in Daled Amas. He has 2,000 Amas outside his Daled Amas, and the Chachamim disagree, and they hold that since he was not awake when Shabbos came in, he's like someone who left the tchum, and someone who left the tchum, that's how we began the Perik Misha Itziyu, they only have Daled Amas. Okay, then we had on the Gemara on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis, we applied it to Cheftzei Hefker with one important difference, huge difference. Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri is the same shita, that if something was Hefker, it also acquires its own tchum, which is good. But here, the Chachamim, they're going to be more lenient than Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. By a person, the Chachamim say explicitly in the Mishnah, Ein li ela Daled Amas. By a thing, the Chachamim, since it does not acquire its own tchum, which it does not, but now what does that mean? It doesn't mean that it's bound in Daled Amas. It means that it's not bound at all, which is good. It can go anywhere. Elama, if a Yid will acquire that hefker during Shabbos, then that item will be like any other object that belongs to a Jewish owner, and that is that wherever I am bound to go, wherever I may not go, because it's beyond my tchum, neither can my objects go there either, even if I'm not the ones taking it there. That means if I take your object on Shabbos, even if my tchum goes to the east more than your tchum, because I made a Veda tchumen, I cannot carry your object there. But the Chachamim will hold that when it comes to chafetzin, they will acquire the tchum of the person who took them into their possession. That is the machlokes we have. And again, according to Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri, he'll be more machmer. He's going to say that they are bound to their own tchum from where they physically was. Yeah, not Daled Amas, 2,000 Amas. But they have their own tchum. So even if someone is going to acquire them on Shabbos, if their tchumim don't perfectly match, then the owner won't be able to take it to wherever he wants. Okay, now what happens to an object that belongs to a goy? That will be the topic. If something belongs to a goy, there's no shvisa. There's no shvisa means that even though the guy was in a certain location, the object was in a certain location when Shabbos came in. I'm allowed to Shabbos or Yom Tov, just to make it simple, because on Shabbos you can't carry. So on Yom Tov there's tchumen, but you're allowed to carry. If I take hold of a chefze v'machri, there's no problem. I can take it to wherever. I cannot go beyond my tchum, but there's nothing binding the chayfetz in any specific area. Says the Gemara, okay, so says Shmuel, but let's analyze liman. According to whom is he saying it? If it's according to the Rabbanan, again the Rabbanan in the Mishnah Daf Mem Hey, then Pshita. Why is it Pshita? Hash the Chefze Hefke. The Leislu Ba'olam at all. Nevertheless, ein Koinen Shvisa, Chefze Nachri, the Islu Ba'olam. And the Ba'olim, the owners, are non-Jews. The non-Jews are not connected to Hilchas Shabbos. Let's follow the rules. The Chayfetz is like the owner. Good. The owner has no tchum. So avade miboye that there's no restrictions of a tchum. No need to say that. So l'chora Ella Shmuel's din was aliba the Rabbi Yechon Menuri, and that's the chiddush for Kamash Malan that ema the Amar Rabbi Yechon Menuri that what that a chayfetz of hefker is kind of shvisa. That's only hanamil chefse hefker the leis lu ba'alim. Okay, that's the difference. But if something belongs to a nachri, since the islu ba'alim. So let's follow our rules. It's like the owner. The owner has no limits. Good. So is the din by the chayfetz. Okay. Bottom line is that they do not acquire a tchum, which means that if the guy allows you to take it somewhere, you can carry on yontif. You don't have to worry about what's the tchum of that chayfetz. It says in a brayso, Rab Shimon ben Elazar Omer Hashoyel Kelim in Anachri be yontif. Okay. How did he get there? Because he's in the same city, but what are you borrowing an object? Someone lends a non-Jew a keli, right? In other words, the point is that it is in a non-Jew's possession when Yom Tov came in. And now, now the next few words are difficult. We're going to teach it the way Rashi teaches it. Are not two things according to Rashi. It means that if you have kalim that were placed in an oitzah, and you have to again Rashi adds, and they were placed to abandon it. In other words, it's hefker, or it's like hefker. Says this brayso that yesh lahem al payim hamal l'chol ruach, like any city residence, it has the tchum of all the people that live in that city. Weiter says the brayso, the nachri she'eveli peiris mechutz l'tchum. Nachri did nothing wrong, but these peiris, when Shabbos came in under the ownership of Nachrim, they were in the other city outside the tchum. If these peiros are bound to the halachas of tchum, then what will be the din? You can't take them more than $1. And that's exactly what the Brayso says. We got a big problem here. Okay? Why? Because they already left. They left their tchum. And that is the halach. Now the question is, who's the author? Who does he follow? At least that Rabbi Yechon Menuri holds that Cheftzei Nachrim Koinem Shvisa. So then we know who does this shita follow. It follows Rabbi Yechon Menuri. Then Hamani Rabbi Yechon Menuri. So since it belonged to a guy and someone took it out of the tchum right over Yom Tiv, it's already chutz l'tchumai, so you can't lo yazizim emekayma. And as we learned also in the beginning, it also would mean you can't even eat it. That even Rabbi Yechon would hold cheftzei nachri ein koinen shvisa and avadas holds the chachamim. Then hamani let Rabbi Yechon Menuri v'lei Rabbanan. So all of this is a kasha on. If Shmuel's statement is correctly to be applied to Rabbi Yechon Menuri, then who will be the author? We can make a new shita, which we try not to do. Says the Gemara La'olam, Kasava, Rabbi Yechon Menuri, like we learned above, that Cheftzei, Hanachri, are Koinem Shvisa. They are Koinem Shvisa. And Shmuel's statement, and that's the author of the Brais. So we're retracting. And Shmuel holds like the Rabbanan. What was the kasha l'Rabbanan Pshita? It's not Pshita. Udekal Amrat l'Rabbanan Pshita. I'll tell you no. Ma'odetema that we would say Gezeira ba'alim denachri otu ba'alim de Yisrael by ba'alim Yisrael. It's bound to the owners. It's not hefker. It has an owner. Even though Taka belonged to a Nachli, maybe people will confuse it. They would have made a loy plug. So that's why Kumash Malan, we needed a Shmuel to say that the Chachamim are not afraid that we're going to confuse who the owners are and confuse one case to the other. And the Cheftzei Nachri are not Koinim Shvisa, only L'Rabbanan. Only L'Rabbanan. Says the Gemara, Atkan Shita Shmuel. However, Rabbi Chia bar Oven Amar Rabbi Yechanan, even according to the Chachamim, Cheftzei Nachri Koinim Shvisa Take Gezeira Ba'alam the Nachri Otu Ba'alam the Yisrael, and therefore the Braisa that we just quoted, Lav Dafka only follows Rabbi Yechanan ben Nuri. It can even follow the sheet of the Chachamim. And now let's go into a story. Hanu Dichrei, there were rams. The Asul Mavrachta, right? That they came into Ashtad Mavrachta on Yom Tov. In other words, we're speaking about rams that belong to Goyim. When Yom Tov came in, they were chutz l'tchum of this city. They were brought into the city. So Shara Lahu Rava Lebnei Mechayza Lemizba Minayu. He allowed the Yidden that lived not in Mavrachta, they lived in Mechayza. They were visiting that city. Rava allowed them to buy these rams on Yom Tov. Again, we're going to learn dinim in Masechta Beitza. I know the people are buying on Yom Tov. Yeah, buying on Yom Tov could be very problematic, but there are certain circumstances, if there's no food, and for Simchas Yom Tov, and if, as long as you don't even make up a price, that's very important. And the amounts are not exactly measured. Obviously, you're going to pay afterwards. But there, in a case where the owner trusts you, so you take a zaitel, you take a piece of meat, but you don't discuss a price, and you don't make payment, such a transaction is allowed to be done on Yom Tov. Guys, just a transaction by itself is asad on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, only with the Rabbanan, not to minimize the Rabbanan. Shema Yichtav, you might write it out. But if it's so vague that there's nothing to write out, you don't know exactly how much you took, you don't know exactly how much you owe, then there's no gzeira. Anyways, the issue here is not about the transaction. You're doing it behetiv. The question is that if we're going to say that even according to the Chachamim, Cheftzei Nachri have a tchum, even according to the Rabbanan, so then how can the Yidden that live in Mechayza take the rams when lo yazizim in Mekayma? So Amalei Ravil and Rava, my daita, how are you giving such a psak din? Are you doing it because the Amar of Yilam Hashmuel, Cheftzei Nachri ein koin and shvisa? However, we just established for Hashmuel, right? Rabbi Yechanan. Well, there's another. This is the final klal. Shmuel and Rabbi Yechanan. The halach is like Rabbi Yechanan. And for Amar Rabbi Chia bar Oven Amar Rabbi Yechanan, Cheftzei Nachri are koinim shvisa even when Rabbanan Gezei Balam the Nachri Otu Balam the Yisrael, as we just learned. So therefore, you should not be allowed to paskin that Yidden of Mechayza can buy these rams. And you know what? Rava Taka took back his psak. He changed his psak. Rava, that the Yidden that live in Mechayza cannot take it. But the Rava still had a heter. The heter was based on the first Mishnah in the Speirik and Naf Memala from the days. What was the first Mishnah? If something does have a tchum, and it leaves its tchum on Shabbos and on Yom Tov, so Elay Ela Daladamas. But what happens, that was the first Mishnah, if when it left its tchum, right now it's in a enclosed area. Right now it's in a city. So Rabban Gamliel, remember, he was the one that held that, and I think Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, the two Tanoim, they held that everything in that city is considered Daladamas. So you, at least in this city, you're not bound to the Daladamas because halachically the dir, the sar, or the city is halachically considered Daladamas. Now we had Rabbi Akiva, we had Rabbi Yeshua, they argued with that. But what Rabbi said is, you're right. Bnei Mechayza cannot take the rams, but at least the Yidden that lived in this Mavrachta, they are allowed to take it. Why is that? Because based on our paskening like Rabban Gamliel, the Kula Mavrachta Ledidu is Ka'arba Ames. We're going to stop over here, and God willing to be continued. All right, we're good? Good. All right. Wow. Okay, you have little dafim, which is very helpful. Okay, all right. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Mem Ches. We're going to start off learning a case where you have two cities, and the B'nai of that city, they can walk beyond their cities, the 2,000 amas. However, you begin counting beyond the city. And it's a scenario where when you come there is one place that's mamish in between these two cities, 2,000 amas away from each one. The center place is a body of water. The actual boundary of the tchum of the city to the right, if you're going to the left, right, doesn't overlap at all with the side city. There's no overlapping of tchumen, but the mamish, they come to the same location, and that's in the middle of a body of water. Now, if we're going to say that this body, the water which is being used both for city A and for city B, they both are sharing this water. If the water in this lake is bound by each own city's tchum, which means that the water that is coming from the other side of the lake, which is beyond the tchum, cannot be taken by city A. Each city should only be allowed to take the water that is within its tchum. If we were to subscribe to such a limitation on those waters, then we're going to have a challenge. And the challenge will be is that how do you know that the water that you are drawing from this body of water on Yom Tif came from your side of the water? Maybe before Shabbos, before Yom Tif came in, it was on the other side of the water. It moved around. And now that you are taking it, you're taking water that's beyond its original owner's tchum. If we were to connect the water to the B'nai Ha'ir, and again, the body of the water, the middle of the body of the water is exactly in the middle, is where these two boundaries touch, where they meet. So then city A can only take from water that was within its tchum. If it's taking water a little bit further away from the water that was closer to city B, then they're taking it out of their tchum. We're going to see whether we have such a problem or not. Fascinating case. Ultimately, we also remember we learned that anything that's moving when Shabbos comes in, when Yom Tov comes in, B'chlal does not acquire a tchum. We're going to see whether we apply this even to a lake, or whether that's taka only applied to a moving stream or to a flowing spring, which was what the Chazal said, because that their movement is much greater than the movement of water that is in a lake. We're going to go back to the Mishnah Daf Mem Hey. And when we learned in the Mishnah, L'shitas Chachamim, when we said, you were traveling and you were sleeping, Einli Ela Daladamas. So afterwards, we had a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yehuda. That Rabbi Eliezer says, V'hu be'emtzon. That daladamas always means, if you only have daladamas, we already place you in middle, and you can go to each direction only 2 amas. Then we learned that Rabbi Yehuda says, no, you get to go a whole 4 amas. 4 amas. You get to choose to which side. If you want to be in the middle, you can be in the middle. If you want to use the 4 amas, if you want to consider yourself at the edge and you want to go to the right, you can go 4 amas to the right or 4 amas to the left. What we're going to clarify now on Daf Mem Ches is that the Tanakama, the Chachamim that say Einli Ela Dalad Amas, that is a 3rd shita. So when you say that a person only has Dalad Amas, really it's a 3-way machlekes tanoim. So we have Rabbi Yehuda, you have 4 amas, but you get to pick which side you want to use. You have the shita of Rabbi Eliezer that V'hu be'emtzon by default, and the Tanakama will hold that you have 4 amas to each of your sides, which means 4 amas doesn't mean 4 amas. 4 amas means 8 amas. 4 amas to the right, 4 amas to the left, 4 amas to the front, and 4 amas to the back. And finally, we're going to have, it's a small daf, but it's amazing. We're going to really go over the case in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Hey Amud Beis, where Rabbi Shimon, the Tanach of Shimon, brought down the case of the 3 chatzeros. Remember that there were 3 chatzeros. Each chatzer had means of going straight into the Rishus Harabim. There was no need for them to be ma'arav one with the other. Happened to be that the 2 outer ones made an eruv with the inner one, but the 2 outer ones were not ma'arav with each other. So we're going to chazer the case. Let's say chatzer A, chatzer B, chatzer C. Chatzer A is on the right, the outer right. Chatzer C is the outer left, and then B is in the middle. So Rab Shimon was of the opinion that that the 2 outer chatzeros can carry their stuff to the middle one. And we're not afraid that since that from A which cannot go to B, cannot go to C, is going to be in the middle, maybe it's going to end up in C. We don't have such a fear. And we're going to really go over that case, and we're going to challenge the whole premise of that case. We're going to challenge it both sides. First of all, if A made an eruv with B, if C made an eruv with B, why doesn't that automatically be ma'at of everyone together? Or in the reverse, maybe by the fact that A and C did not make an eruv, maybe that should restrict even their eruv that they made with B, as we'll go through all the dinner. We're going to clarify, is Rab Shimon's heter of carrying only from the outer ones to the inner one? Or also the inner one to the outer one? Could you say maybe it's only a one-way heter? And many, many other details. Let's start where we left off on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis. At the end, the last word of the second line before the bottom of the Amud. Second to last line at the end of the line. Says the Gemara. So again, we have a body of water. If you were to measure the middle of the body of water to the city, to the A, it's 2,000 amos. If you were to measure from the center of the body of the water to the other city, to the opposite direction, it is within 2,000 amos. So members of both cities on Yom Tov, where there's no problem of carrying, they can look, theoretically, they can go to the edge of the water and draw water. Even if the water belonged to them when Shabbos came in, and therefore it's bound to their tchum, they're taking their water. But maybe not. Maybe we have to have a fear that the water that they are drawing when Yom Tov came in was on the other side of the lake. And therefore it's connected to the tchum of the other city. And now that it moved to the opposite side of the lake, it's already outside its tchum. If it's outside its tchum, what's the rule if something leaves its tchum? Okay, says the Gemara, Tani Rab Chia. Rab Chia taught the following brayz, that chedem shebein tchumei Shabbos, chedem means a fishing net. Why was there a fishing net, and why is that negeya? We'll see soon. But if they placed a fishing net that went across the lake that actually marked the end of the tchum of city A, and the other side of the fishing net marked the end of the tchum of city B. And if we were to halachically, we have 2 points here. Point number one is, you can say that the water b'chal is hefker. And if we're going to go that cheftzei hefker, right, don't have shvisa, b'chal, there's no issue. But if we're going to go then in this case, we're going to view the water of one side belonging to city A, the water of the other side belonging to the residents of city B, and therefore they're bound to the area of where those city residents may go. Then if the water moved outside its tchum, then no one can take any water. Now you have a chedem. Now what would a fishing net help? It doesn't stop the flow of water, but wait, don't forget a fishing net, to use the word of lavud, you can consider it some sort of wall. Okay, says the Braisa, so taught Rab Chia, that we don't say that the fishing net creates a proper mechitza, which will resolve this fear of waters that you are drawing coming beyond its tchum. It does not resolve that. And therefore, no cities may take any water on Yom Tov unless Tzarech Daf Mem Ches Amud Aleph, here will be the solution, mechitza sher basel hafsikoi. If you were to put a metal wall that would completely stop the flow of water from one side of the lake to the other, so I can be sure, so to say, that if I'm coming from city A and I'm going to the edge of the water that's in the tchum of city A and I'm drawing the water, that was the water that was in that part of the lake when Yom Tov came in. This water did not go out the tchum of city B. No, the water that's here is from city A. Then I can draw the water. If I don't have a wall that's mafsik the flow of the water, then just because there was some sort of chedem, a net mechitza, it has nothing to do with our challenge. It doesn't resolve anything, and no one is allowed to draw water from that lake, not from city A nor from city B. Says the Gemara that when Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Chanina heard this brayso, he laughed. He laughed. L'chayda means that this brayso is not authentic. He didn't even explain why he didn't find it necessary. He minimized. So ask Gemara, my time right? Why was he laughing? Because he understood that he held like Rabbi Yechon Menuri, that this water had no owner, right? And if the water had no owner, then according to the Chachamim, guys, let's chazer again. When do the Chachamim say doubledaf only on the sleeping traveler, but achefetz lechachamim has no tchum, and therefore it's ownerless. And when you take it, you can take it to wherever you can go. In other words, is it because he paskin like the Chachamim, that Brais of Rab Chia, that is giving a tchum to the mayim, to whom? To the whatever is within city A is within the tchum of city A. What the water that's within the tchum of city B belongs to city B, and the waters therefore cannot go from one side to the other. So just because there's a braisa that's paskening lechumrek Rabbi Yechon and the Nuri, and he held like the Chachamim, that's no reason to laugh. So mishum the savar lekula. So man the tani lechumra. If you have a braisa that's paskening like Rabbi Yechon and the Nuri, what machayach halo? No, that can't be. Elo mishum the tanya. Because we learned that Naharis HaMoishchin, right? But listen to the deal: flowing streams, Umayamis Hanovim, gushing springs. We learned Hareim Karagli Koladam. Karagli Koladam means that whoever acquires it now can take that water to wherever they are allowed to go. In other words, everyone will hold that something that was in movement when Shabbos came in has no tchum at all. Lekula alma. Well, if it has no tchum, then who cares where the water was? If the water never acquired a tchum when Yom Tov came in, so why would there be any restriction? That's also not a reason to laugh at this braisa, because Vidilma perhaps that the braisa was speaking about a body of water that we'll call a lake. It wasn't gushing and it wasn't flowing. It was stationary. Vidilma b'mechunas, and by mechunasim, if the water is considered under the ownership of a group of people, then yes, it will be bound by that those people's tchum. Elo, maybe he laughed because the Braisa gave a solution, and the solution is a non-solution. The solution was tzarech mechitza shel barzel avsikoi. So he quoted, you have to have a metal wall. And hold on, asks Tigamar Umayshna Kanem Deloy, why wouldn't a partition of reeds suffice? Really, why wouldn't the chedim suffice? Because the Ayla B'Umaya, because it doesn't stop the flow of water. Well, Oy Bazoi, Shal Barzel Nami Ayla B'Umaya. Even if you put a metal wall in water, so is the nature of water. But you don't think there's going to be one crevice under the wall in the soft ground that water cannot go back and forth? There's no such a thing. You cannot completely interrupt, certainly not with the technology that they had then. So maybe that's why he laughed. That's also not a reason to laugh, because maybe the Tana didn't mean that if you put a mechitza shel barzel, you have a solution. No, the dilma tzarich ve'elay takana kama. The Braisa means theoretically you need to have a mechitza shel barzel, because the waters belong to their closest cities, and maybe the waters of one side went to the other, which means the waters went out of the tchum. Out of the tchum einlei aladaladamas, and taka no one can draw water, even if you were to put a mechitza shel barzel. It's just a way of saying that there's no solution. So therefore, the Gemara says, no, I'll tell you why Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Chanina completely has to reject this braisa. Elam Yishum, we have a klal, we have a rule, the kalu sheikei l'chachamim b'mayim, that we do allow a otherwise flimsy mechitza to be considered a bona fide halachic mechitza when it comes to water, as kid Rav Tavla, the boyim in Rav Tavla midrav, mechitza teluya mao shetata bechurva. Mechitza teluya by a churva is just a great practical example, but it's not only a question regarding a churva. If you have a house and one of its walls got ruined, but it got ruined only in the bottom part, the upper part, the higher part of the wall is still standing. So we have a rule that good achis, that the wall should go down, right? But on the other hand, what do we learn? That since Gediyim boy can boy, even though that theoretically the wall halacha l'meishum misina should be considered as if it's touching the ground, but since animals, if there is an opening of 3 tvachim or more, can easily go under it, it breaks the good achis. Okay, but he wanted to know whether we say that or not. And if it doesn't break the good achis, then that wall still counts. And Amalei Rabbi told him that ein mechitza teluya materes ela b'mayim. There is one place where we will subscribe to good achis, even though there are things moving physically under the opening in the wall, and that will be in water. So we had that the picture above, right? So if you have a reshus hayachid over a body of water, as long as you make some sort of box that has no floor, and the walls of the box are 10 tfachim, we subscribe to good achis. We make believe as if these walls go all the way down to the ground in the water, under the water. All of the water under the box is considered in the reshus hayachid, and therefore you are taking from a reshus hayachid to reshus hayachid. Fish go through it. Forget about fish. The water itself, the water is moving. By water, because of the necessity that people have to drink water, we don't say that fish are boikim or the mayim is boikim. The Rav really answered the question by a churba, which was that since Gideon boikim boy, you can't say good achis when you need to go until the ground. Now, guys, sometimes you want to make a wall go down, but it doesn't have to touch the ground. Then you do say good achis. But not when it has to touch the ground, because the animals are walking through. So why do we see over here that by mayim we are very lenient when it comes to mechitzas? And therefore, let's go back now to the chayrim. There was a fishing net. If there was a fishing net, that's the way at least I understand the Gemara. What we are saying is that that is considered a good enough of a mechitza. And all of the waters that is within one side of the net is viewed to be separated from the waters of the other side. So the people that live in city A, they can go to the edge of the water and they can gather the water, and they can say that all the water that is on our side is considered waters that were there from when Shabbos came in. And therefore, we're not taking the water outside of someone else's tchum. That's why you laughed at this brayso. All right. And now we're going back to the Mishnah Daf Mem Hey, the Chachamim who argue with Rabbi Yechon and the Nuri. A sleeping traveler, ein lo ela daladamis. And Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yehuda is clear. We're going to clarify that the Chachamim is really the first of three opinions of how you count the daladamis. Because if not for that, the Gemara begins with the kasha that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Eliezer says that v'hu be'emtzon. Daladamis means that you don't get to pick where the daladamis will be. You are automatically in the middle. Then comes Rabbi Yehuda and he says, no. You have 4 amas and you get to pick verbally or by actually walking where you want your daladamis to be. So the Gemara is wondering, is it Rabbi Yehuda the Tanakama? So the Gemara says, no, it's a third opinion. The Tanakama holds that daladamis doesn't actually mean daladamis. Daladamis means 4 to each side. Just like the Tchum Shabbos, we say 2,000 amas. You know what the emes is? It's not 2,000 amas. I have at least 4,000 amas, at least. If I am in a city, then I have the whole city, plus 2,000 amas in each direction. That Shmoyna al Shmoyna Ikerin Hayum. Rabbi Yehuda doesn't hold of that. Rabbi Yehuda holds you only have a total of 4 amas. Elamai, you get to pick where they are. Rabbi Eliezer is the most machmir, which is normally the case. Rabbi Eliezer follows Beishamai. So there's a 4 and you are already in the middle, you only have 2 amas. Tanyanami Hachi. Clearly that there is a shita that says that you have 8 amas. 8 amas means 4 amas, a halachic 4 amas, 4 to each side. Yesh le shmoyna al shmoyna divrei Rabbi Meir. That's a machayim. So now we have Rav Meir, Rabbi Eliezer, and Rabbi Yehuda. Just going back to the last daf and the last 2 daf, that based on the klolim, the halacha should be like, as a rule, halacha should be like Rabbi Yehuda. This lechur is not a gzeira. This is just a way of interpreting the meaning of the daladamis. In fact, here Rav Meir is the lenient one. Okay. Rabbi adds another detail. Machloikis lahalich. Right? How far can you go? Can you go 2 amas to your right? Can you choose to go 4 amas to your right? Can you go 4 amas to your right and 4 amas to your left? Avol, however, when it comes to letaltel has nothing to do with tchumen. We're going back to Hilchas Shabbos. Can you carry b'reshus harabim? So within 4 amas, less than 4 amas, you could. With Rabbanan, they told you not to do it, but you are allowed to carry. You may not carry 4 amas or more, right? We learned they're violating a biblical haitza'am. Don't think that Rav Meir will say, you really have 8 amas. You have 4 amas, you have an object in the Reshus Harabim, you can carry it within 4 amas to the right and within 4 amas to the left, and a little bit less than 8 amas. No one subscribes to that. Arba amas really means less than 4 amas. Within 4 amas, only there are you allowed to carry. But fei, 4 or more, no one will say that, the object was here, I'm going to take it 3.9 here and 3.9 here. You can't do that. Can't do that. The leniency of Rav Meir is only when it comes to tchum, as far as you walking yourself. And now the kasha of the Gemara is, Fahani arba ames, heichak sivom. What are we asking about? So we're going to ask, how do you know that if you left your tchum, you do have at least 4 ames? However you touch it, like Rav Meir, like Rabbi Eliezer, where do you get that from? That Rambam actually understands this Gemara's kasha to be where we know that carrying daled ames b'reshus harabim is a biblical violation of Eitzah. We're not going to go with that pshat. We're learning here the halachas of tchum. So it says the Gemara Kedatanya, the Brisa quotes a pasuk in B'Shalach, which is regarding the man, that Moshe Rabbeinu telling the Yidden not to go get the man on Shabbos, it's going to fall double on Friday. And here we have the word shuvu, ish tachtov, sit, each man in his place. Kaich is the Brisa, the another meaning. You know what Moshe Rabbeinu was saying? That if you actually went to get your man on Shabbos, now who needed to get their man b'chlal? So we know that tzaddikim, their man fell on their doorsteps. The Beinim, it fell close. It was only to the Rishayim that it left chutz lamachna. Chutz lamachna means outside the tchum, because that was the whole tchum, 2,000 amos. So Moshe Rabbeinu was telling him that if you are going to go Shabbos, erroneously thinking that more manna fell, first of all, you're going to discover there's nothing there. But he told him another din. Now that you left your tchum, shavu ish tachtav, you got to stay there until the end of Shabbos. Where is the air? Outside the camp. You left your tchum. But what does it mean? You can't move? Are you frozen? So the drush is ki tachtav, means that you are restricted to the area that you need for underneath you. Now, how much space do you take up? The kama tachtav. Gufoi shalish ames. That's the average height of a goof. And we are not telling a yid you got to stand the whole Shabbos. You can sit and lay down. So if you're laying down, if you're going to measure from the head until your end of your foot, you'll have 3 amas. But people need more space than that. Va'ama, you need an additional amma, to properly stretch your hands and your feet. And that is the source of 4 amas, divrei Rabbi Meir. I want to add something, that going to what we just learned above, that really 4 amas means 8 amas, according to Rav Meir, which is the Tanach of our Mishnah, included in that. Also, we should show this Braisa, this Mishnah, these Tanoim to the people that make chairs on an airplane, even in business class. You know, you need more than just your height. According to Rav Meir, you basically need almost 8 amas. Rabbi Yehuda says, no, gufai sholish amas, va'ama, and the additional 4th amma, kedei sheyitel chayfetz mitachas margaloisov umaniach tachas mirashoisov. That if you have an object that's under your feet and you want to put it under your head, now you're not moving that. You need a little bit beyond your feet and a little bit behind your head to be able to remove it from underneath your feet and to put it underneath your head. That's another kitachtav adding to 4 amas. What's the difference between Rav Meir's emphasizing the space that you need, lifshoit yodav araglov, versus Rabbi Yehuda's kedei sheyitel? The Gemara says, ikibenayu arba amas vitzum tzomais, which is exactly what we just learned above. According to Rabbi Yehuda, it's only 4 amas. You only need a little bit on each side to move something from underneath you, and a little bit beyond your head to put it under your head. According to Rav Meir, that's kedei lifshoit yodav araglov, then you need to have more than 4 amas. And indeed, he's giving you 4 amas in each direction. All right. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Meshashia Livrei, that you, my son, ki oyalt likami that Rav Papa, you are traveling, and I know that you're going to meet the great Rav Papa. When you find him, boy, when I ask of him, Arba Amish Amru, I have a kash on the whole Arba Amis, and that is it Ba'amad Didei Yavinolei? Do we give him what he needs? Now, guys, an Amma is really, if you just pick up your forearm, an Amma is from the tip, from the end of your longest finger, which is the middle finger, until your elbow. That's 1 amma. Now, is it a uniform measurement, or didei? Didei means the opposite. Do you measure your own 4 ammas? Amma shel kodesh was a standardized amma. We learned this not that long ago in the Beis Hamikdash. An amma was comprised of 6 tefachim, and it's not based on the size of your tefach. It's all standardized size, right? 6 times 4 is it 24 tefachim, or every person gets to measure their own personalized daled amas. And the challenge that Rav Mesharshia had wasn't only to resolve which side of the boya, but he had a kasha on each side. He tells, this is what you should ask my son. He's speaking to a son. This is what you should ask Rav Papa. If it's a standard amo, then I have a simple question. If Oig Melech HaBashan leaves his tchum, or a Jew that's as large, Oig was a goy, he's not bound by tchumen. But if you have a giant and you're telling him, oh, you have ketachtov, if you're giving him a standard 4 amas, Oig Melech HaBashan won't fit in there. To resolve the kasha on a giant like Oig, then you, my son, ask of Rav Papa, I have another kasha. My Tamalikatani law, in Kalim, we have a Mishnah, and the Mishnah is enumerating all of the laws, right, that we'll call them that they are variables. And they're not that many, because normally we have standardized measurements. But there in Kalim, we're putting together all of the exceptions where it's not standardized, but it's depending on your own size. If the daladamas, which is a big din, that if you leave your tchum, you only have daladamas, if it varies according to you, so then why didn't the Mishnah count it in Kalim? That's a great question. And indeed, his son went, and he found Rav Papa, and he asked him the kasha. Kiyasa l'kami de Rav Papa, Amarle, when Rav Papa heard not just the boya, but the kasha on each side, this is a very important line in the Gemara. I know everyone will apply differently, but listen to what Rav Papa told him. Number one, that that if you're going to analyze everything you learn, the way we all do now in yeshiva, and don't ask how in some yeshivas, you can spend 4 years learning 3 lines. If you're going to be medayik and you're going to overanalyze everything, you're not going to end up teaching anything. It's interesting. He didn't say you're not going to end up learning anything. You must tell me you will learn a lot, for sure, but you're not going to have enough to teach. In other words, here again, perhaps that Papa is saying, Sinai and Oiker Harim, you have to have Sinai. You're getting stuck. You're overanalyzing everything. What are you going to end up teaching? So first of all, he didn't like all of these kvetcharayers, but he asked a question. Now, Rav Papa, there is an answer. These analytics are gewaldic. The challenge is only that you're not going to end up accumulating enough to teach. But now that you stopped and you asked the question, Rav Papa can answer the question. The daladamas is not a standardized, it's a variable. Elama, what was your question? Why didn't the Mishnah enumerate this in Kalim? That's the beginning of that Mishnah. I'll tell you. Because even though, yes, it's individualized, but it's not always individualized. And you know what the Mishnah in Kalim counts? Only that which is a variable always. It's called psikale. It's a psak, meaning not only it's a rendering, but it's a psak din that always is the same. Because this take, normally we say ba'amadidei, but we may not and we cannot always say ba'amadidei. The way psikale. And Rav Papa explained why there has to be an exception here, that there will be a time where we won't say it's amadidei. And that is, just like you gave me an example of a Melech HaBashan, of a Jew that's a giant, what happens? Another anomaly. You can have a person whose hands are very short. The body is normal. The hands are very short. If you're going to say that it's always going to be Amadidei, he's not going to fit again, because his forearm can be, if he has a midget forearm, so you'll measure 4. You measure 4, it won't be enough for his body to fit in. So to such a person, you will have to give a standardized 24 tvachim. The Mishnah in Kalim is only counting that which is a variable, which is always variable, and that's why this was not included. Okay. Now we're going to go to the final topic of today, which will still go into tomorrow, into Daf Memtes. What do we have in the Mishnah? The Mishnah began speaking first about 3 Jews that, as we explained, they were all exactly 2 amas away from each other. Every Jew is given 4 amas. All of them left their tchum. Right now, they are ERUVIN, Shimon, Levi. If you were to measure the space in between them, is only 2 amas. But let's go now that everyone has 4 amas and he's in the middle. Right? Even according to Rabbi Yehuda, he chose to go 2 and 2. which means that the guy in the middle, Shimon or B in the middle, his 4 amas overlap 2 of the one on the right, 2 on the one on the left. But the one on the right, the outer ones have no overlap at all, right? Because they're completely out. That will be the case. So the Mishnah said, right, that the ones that are on the outside, they can join the one on the inside. So they can join the one on the inside. We're not afraid that once they go to the middle, or once their objects go to the middle, that the object from one outer one will end up in the place of the other outer one, and that will be a problem because there is no overlap over the outside daladamas. We don't have that fear that the outer ones can come to the inner one. And on that, Rab Shimon gave a mashal, and I'll tell you to what this is compared to. And he gave the case of the 3 chatzeros. We're going to call it A, B, and C. That again, that A made an eruv with B. C made an eruv with B. And there, the objects that began in the outer ones, let's go in this direction now, are allowed to come to the middle. And there also, we're not afraid that if something from A is going to B, maybe that object will go to C. And if that were to happen, oh, that's not good, because A and C may no eruv chatzeros. But we don't have such a fear. So just like by the chatzeros, the outer ones can go to the inner one, when it comes to the individual people, right, that each one of them only has daladamas, as long as A and B overlap, as long as C and B overlap, they can move their chafetzim from the outer ones to the inner one, and we're not afraid that it's going to go from one edge to the other. That is what we learned in the Mishnah. And the problem the Gemara begins with, why did Rab Shimon have to bring the case of the chatzeros? It's mamish the same. It's mamish the same. He's not adding anything. It's you're just giving the same exact din. Instead of 4 amas, you're speaking about a chatzer. So the Gemara says, actually, in Daf Mem Tes, we're going to discover that the Chachamim argue with Rab Shimon. The case of people, each one having daladamas, only the middle one overlaps with the outer ones, but the outer ones' amas do not overlap at all with each other. Isn't this like l'shalish chatzeres hapsuches ulazu? Yes, I know it's the same, but this is what Rab Shimon added. Hassan, when it comes to the case of the chatzeros, you argue. Now, where do they argue? We're going to see that on Daf Mem Tes. But they don't allow. Now, there are different ways in the Rishonim how to learn Shitas Chachamim. We're going to follow the first one in Rashi. The Chachamim don't allow any movement, not by the chatzeros, not from A to B, nor from B to A. Not from C to A, from the outer to the inner, nor from B to C. 0 movement is allowed. They argue. So you are coming, now the Chachamim made no such argument in the Mishnah on Daf Mem Beis. The Chachamim actually gave that case. Everyone agrees that if it's not about a chatzon, if it's about 3 yechidim, and the outer ones amas don't overlap at all with each other, but the outers both overlap with the inner, then you can carry from the outer ones to the inner ones. Why is there no argument over there? So when it comes to the case of the chatzeros, you argue. That's what Rab Shimon says. You see, it's like the chatzeros. And by the chatzeros, you argue. So why is it that by the 3 individuals, you do allow the people in the outer 4 amas for them to take their stuff into the ones with whom they do overlap, and you're not afraid that one object will end up on the other side, meaning something that entered Shabbos on A will end up with C. Why don't you have that fear? So the Gemara says that is what Rab Shimon meant. And the answer for that is V'Rabbanan, over there, since there are many people living in all these chatzeros, so therefore there's a lot. If you will allow the outer ones to take their stuff into the inner one, so many people, so many things, there is a greater chashash that something will end up in the opposite chatzer. So an item went from one chatzer to another chatzer with whom there was no eruv chatzeros. But over here in the Mishnah, they're only speaking about 3 yechidim. There aren't many people, it's 3 people. By 3 people, the Chachamim hold that people can guard, they can make sure that something that originated from the daladamas of the one from A will never end up in the daladamas of C. So they had no chashash, because really they argue with Rav Shimon only as a precautionary boundary to prevent something from happening. And now let's analyze the sheet of Rav Shimon himself. Right, Rav Shimon holds A, B, C. A made an Eruv Chatzeros with B. C made an Eruv Chatzeros with B. A and C did not make an Eruv Chatzeros. Okay, and the point of the Mishnah is that I'm speaking in one direction to make things clear, and then we'll expand it to the other direction. That the outer ones can carry to the inner one, because A made an Eruv with B, C made an Eruv with B. We're not afraid that if C is going to carry to B, some Chacham is going to take it into A, Seder. But A and C, how can they not carry one to the other? And the question is, why not? Why not? Why don't we say that A joining B and C joining B, why doesn't that automatically connect all three together? Why are the objects that begin when Shabbos comes in the outer Chatzeros, why can they not end up from A to C or from C to A? What's the kasha? Kiven the arvi lohu chitzonios bahademsois. Since the outer ones, both A made an Eruv with B, C made an Eruv with B. So havi lohu chada, they should become one. Push it. Okay. Guys, let's look inside. This detail will be very important. I want to know, where did they place the Eruv? Where did they place the Eruv? So Rashi, under the first line under the Gemara says, that Kegoin shenasnu shteihem eruvan be'emtsois. The kasha is predicated on the understanding, doesn't matter, even in the case where both the food that was joint owned by A and B was placed in B. The food that was jointly owned by C and B was placed in B. If everything was placed in the center, now the kasha makes a lot of sense. Because everything now is in the same location. Everything is in the same location, so, it all becomes one corporation. If B becomes part of A, and B made an Eruv with C, so then everyone is Mu'uraf together. Especially since the Eruv is in the same place. And the Gemara gives two important answers. Answer number one, Amar Rav Yehuda, that you're right, that if the outer ones would have placed the Eruv inside, that will cause all three Chatzeros to become one corporation. Everyone is incorporated. Everyone is allowed to carry from anywhere to anywhere. The case of our Mishnah is only Kigoin Shenasna Emtsois, Eruv Bezu, Veruv Bezu. It was Dafkin a case where the one in the middle, B, placed its joint Eruv with A in someplace in A. B that joined with C placed its part of that Eruv in the Chatzer C. There is nothing of both outer ones together, not at all. And that's why the A and C remain non-incorporated. There is no Eruv in between them. So holds Rav Yehuda. However, if Rav Sheshes says, I disagree with that. The Mishnah is even referring to a case where the outer ones placed their Eruv in the inner one. Even if both outer ones placed the Eruv in the middle one. However, Kigoin Shenasnu, you have a good kasha, but it's in the inner one. We are turning on the Mem Ches on the base. Kigoin Shenasnu, says the Gemara B'Shtei Batim. If they would have been placed taka in the same house, then you're right to ask the question. It's all one, but it was not placed in the same house. It's in two different houses. Since it's in two different houses, then A and C and A are not incorporated. They remain separated. Says the Gemara, how can you, Rav Sheshes, say that since they're not in the same place, even though they are in the general same chatzir, it doesn't automatically link anyone? Is that l'chayda following Beis Shammai, which is obviously unacceptable? Where do we find Beis Shammai opining on such a shita? Well, not exactly, but something very similar. The Tanya we learned in a brayso. Forget about three chatzeros, one chatzir that has 5 residents. Says the brayso that if chamisha shegavu es eruvin, everyone Everyone gave their bread, but instead of placing it in the same keli, they place it in two separate kelim. Beis Shammai are the ones that say, since the food is not all together, ein eruvim eruv. And Beis Hillel argues and they say, I don't care if it's not in the same kelim, it can be in two kelim or more kelim. He says eruvim eruv. So what do we see over here? That according to Beis Hillel, they need not be in the same location. So you, Beis Shammai, that explains the rationale behind the Mishnah, because they were not, even if the outer ones were placed in the inner chutzner, if they're not placed in the same home, so therefore it's not one large corporation. No, nicht. That's only according to Beis Shammai. How can you follow Beis Shammai? The Gemara says it's not true. You're comparing apples and oranges. I know that Beis Hillel doesn't need for it to be in the same keli. It can be in two kelim, it can be in 10 kelim, but it has to be in one house. The concept they agree to. I feel that in Beis Hillel, so since it is in one bias, it's considered enough, one location. But if, even according to Beis Hillel, it's not considered one location, it's considered two separate locations, and that's exactly how Rav Sheshes explains the case of our Mishnah, according to Rav Shimon, that again, that the Eruv worked, the Eruv didn't get messed up. A and B can carry, C and B can carry, which directions we'll see in a moment, but for sure from the outer to the inner. But even though both eruvim are placed in the B, nevertheless, it doesn't link, it doesn't incorporate the two outers, A and C. Says the Gemara, I have a kasha in both shittas. Rabbi Yehuda kasha, Rabbi Sheshes kasha. Rabbi Yehuda kasha explains, keep going, the Oman, what are you telling me? That what is the case of the Mishnah only when the eruv from B was placed in the outer ones, keep going, shenosna emsois eruv abizu. So B placed an eruv that he made with A in the chutzner A. Then B placed its eruv that it made with C in C. How did you answer my question? So what? So what? I'm going to ask, everyone should be allowed to carry with everyone. Think about it, guys. If B makes a partnership with A, and it places eruv in A, but now B and A are one. Now B and A are one. Now B goes ahead and it places a shnu eruv with C. It placed it in C. But who is B? B is no longer B. B is B and A now. Once B made an eruv with one side, with A, it became one. So now anything that it does, think about partners. Understand this? Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. If Shimon makes a partnership, Shimon and Reuven are the same entity. They're the same incorporated entity. So now if Shimon does a business deal with Levi, what, do you think Reuven is not going to want a piece of that? Of course. He'll tell Shimon, we are one. Who cares where you place the eruv? The kivin, the eruv, I'm sois bahad chitzoino. First it placed it, let's say again, in one of the outer sides. Now, what does that eruv do? Havi lechada. And we are agreeing to that. We're saying that the middle one can carry without outer one. So now, so then B is no longer just B. Guys, this is all of the machloikis and the Avon partnerships are all come from this little amud over here. And therefore, I'm still back with my question. I don't understand, why can you not carry from A to C? Why not? Even if the eruvim were placed in the outer ones. That's question number one. Now, according to what Rav Sheshes says, and that is that they both placed it in the center one, but not in the same house, I'm going to ask an opposite question. What happens if 5 people live together and the shachach, we had this last daf, if one person doesn't make an eruv, he messes it up for everyone. Same concept. If A made an eruv with B, you're telling me right now that A and C are not connected. So if A put food in B, and now there is C that put food in B, if you don't allow A and C to carry to each other, so then I can argue that B lives in A lives in B, the outer lives in the inner one. There is C that lives in the inner one, C lives in B. C and A are not connected, so they shouldn't only mess it up for C and A, they should mess it up for B also. Because in the inner one, you have 2 entities that are not joined. 2 entities that are not joined should not be different than one entity that Bechal didn't join the eruv. If not, it was the inner, you should not even be allowed to carry, but not even in the inner one. Forget about carrying from the outer to the outer. You can't even carry in from the inner to the inner, B to B, because you have different diurim. A is a partner, C is a partner, and they're not together. Wow, that's a great question.
Essentially, there would be no eruv going on, basically, right?
So says the Gemara, we have to answer both questions. Amar Avashi, right? The Chacham al Rishon Rishon, the Alach Nachem. The Loy Rabbi Yehuda Kasha, the Loy Rabbi Sheshes Kasha, and Rabbi Yehuda Loy Kasha. What was your first Kasha? Your first question was that even though they put it in the outer Chatzeros, so what? Once the middle one made an eruv with A, so then when the middle one makes an eruv with C, why doesn't A automatically join that? Kiven the eruv Allah emsois bahadi chitzoino u'shtayim chitzoinis bahadi adadi loy eruv. Every partnership works different. By the fact that the eruv was dafka placed in the outer ones, that's the key here. The fact that B placed the eruv in A, and then not A went with C, not A and C, B went with C, and it was again placed in C. Had the outer ones indeed wanted to have joined, right, then they should have participated in that. The fact that they never made any joint participation together when such a thing happened from the middle one, it's keilu they were megala, their das, that they don't want to be partners. Even the Eberlein says, Ushtayim chitzoinis v'hadam dadi loy ervu. So gal yodate the baha nichalei. They only like B. They don't want to deal. The A's and the C's do not get along. And when you, if we say that's called a displaying of unwillingness, but whenever when it comes to these corporations, when it's known that in this Groise incorporation, two players don't want to work together in partnership. If they display that unwillingness, then don't forget, an Eruv Chatzeris, you can't compare this to a normal corporation. An Eruv Chatzeris is a very limited corporation. An Eruv Chatzeris, really, how are they partners? Because they all share food together. It's a little bit of a galadas that everyone is sharing with everyone. The fact that A and C did not join at all with each other, they're megaladas, they don't want to join with each other. Now, guys, if they would have placed their food in B, then there would be no such gili das. This is an answer only Rabbi Yehuda l'shitasoi. Since no eruv was placed in the middle, the eruvin is placed always in the outer ones, and the outer ones did not join with each other. That's called the gili das, that they don't want to be partners. So A is a partner with B, C is a partner with B, but A and C are not partners. Well, it upsheshes like kasha. What was the kasha? That since they both have food in the middle, and A is part of B, C is part of B, but A and C are not joining, so it should be as if they all live together, and they did not all join eruvim with each other. So in other words, the kasha was based on the premise that we want to use the instrument of eruv chatzeros to mess things up. And it doesn't go in that direction. The whole instrument of an eruv chatzeros is a leniency, like we just mentioned. How are they partners? I own my house, you don't own my house. No, we say that's ki'ilu, everyone owns everyone's house. Everyone is a joint partner in anyone. But anyone who has to live in the schutzer. The guys in C don't live in B, they don't live in B. The guys in A don't live in B. So to say that it's the eruv chatzeros is so strong that it's as if they live there, and as if C lives there. And now that you have A living there and C living there, and they didn't do it with each other, they're absent, we don't use an eruv chatzeros l'chumro. Im amru di yoiden lahaka and chanami, but yoimru di yoiden lahachmer, that we don't say. They're not incorporated so much to say that it's as if A is in there and C is in there and they didn't join together. Bottom line will be is that Rab Shimon holds that the outer and the inner are mu'urav, and they actually may carry their things, and there's no fear that if you're going to take something from A to B, that thing will end up in C. That's not allowed to happen, but we're not afraid that it's going to happen. And now we're going to see that this is not everyone subscribes to it. There's a machlekes, as we just mentioned. I want you to know that that's only Rabbi Yehuda that allows the outer one to counter to the inner one. That says that what? Aval chachamim oimrim reshus achas mishameshes l'shtei reshuyos. Now we have to know how to teach these words. And let's go like this, that Rav Shimon allows carrying in both directions. Rav Shimon allows carrying in both directions. That means that you can carry from the outer to the inner and from the inner to the outer. Never from A to C, but A and B, both directions. A and B, both directions. C and B, both directions. The Chachamim who argue, what do they argue? That's according to the version of Rav. Reshus achas mishameshes l'shtei reshuyos. Zajac Rashi, guys, 5 lines under the Gemara. Kalim sheshavsu b'chitzonius. The Chachamim also allow something that began in the outer to go to the inner. Right? Kalim sheshavsu b'chitzonius mutar zansois. Outer, inner. But the Chachamim argue, they argue with one detail. Something that began in the inner can never go to the outer. Why do they say something from the inner cannot go to the outer? To prevent the fear. What's the fear? Even Rav Shimon says something in A cannot end up in C. Something that began in C cannot end up in B. So how do you stop that from happening? Not by completely dismissing the whole eruv. You stop it from happening by saying that only outer to the inner. Nothing from inside can go outside. Nothing from B can go to A. You know what you benefit? If nothing from B can go to A, so even if something from C will go to B, that's his version of the Chachamim, it's never going to end up going in the wrong chatzah. In other words, the eruv works, but only in one direction. Reshus achas mishameshes l'shtei reshuyos, aber lo shtei reshuyos mishameshes l'reshus achas. So we learned it the way Rashi learns it. Or it's the Chachamim argue, they are machmir, but Rav Shimon allows both way movements. From outer to inner and from inner to the same outer. Never A to C, never C to A, but between A and B and between C and B, both ways movement is allowed, and the Chachamim hold that only outer to inner, never inner to outer. However, says the Gemara, that Ki Amrita Kamei de Shmuel, Rabbi Yehuda, after Rav passed away, he went to Shmuel, so he repeated to Shmuel what Rav said. Amarli, Rav now, Shmuel now disagreed with the understanding of Rav and the Chachamim Daf Mem Tes on top of the Amid. No, when you're telling me that the Chachamim allow outer to inner, that's only Rav Shimon. This is the first Lishna of Rashi. Afzu Divrei Rav Shimon. But the Chachamim who disagree with Rav Shimon, they don't allow any movement. Now, every chatzah within itself can still carry. Because the case of the Mishnah is that before they made this part reaching across the aisle, before B made an eruv with A, before B made an eruv with C, every chatzah made an eruv with each other. But the Chachamim argue and they say, Avo Chachamim oimrim shloshtan asuros, complete, no direction from A to B. Cannot even go in that direction. Not only not from B to A, not even from A to B. And let's hop another few lines. Tanya, Kabasi de Rav Yehuda, Aliba de Shmuel, who understands the Chachamim to be a lot more restrictive. But Amar Rav Shimon, this is according to Braisa, Lamad over Doima, the case of our Mishnah of 3 people. It's just like the 3 Chatzeros, L'sholish Chatzeros Hapsuch Zulazu, and each one has an opening to a Rosh Hashanah. That if Eir V'Shtayim Imam Mitzois, all right, and each outer one can bring it to the inner one. That's Rav Shimon. And then each resident from the outer Chatzeros who brought their food to the inner can then take it back. Clearly, it can move both ways, outer, inner, inner, outer. The Chachamim say, no movement is allowed in no directions at all. So that's a proof to Shmuel's understanding of the Shita of the Chachamim, God willing, to be continued. Good?
Yeah.
Perfect. Right, Yidden, Slichas, see you.